What if Canada's response to Donald Trump's tariffs was never about retaliation? What if it was never about pride? What if it was about leverage? Because this week, oil prices in the United States surged to levels not seen in months, and the primary factor is not Middle East instability. It is not OPEC decisions. It is Canada. Following Trump's aggressive tariff threats, Ottawa has reportedly moved to restructure energy exports in ways that directly impact American refineries. And now, gas prices across the United States are climbing. This is no longer abstract trade theory. This is economic pressure with immediate consequences at the pump. Energy markets do not operate on rhetoric. They operate on supply, refining capacity, and logistical infrastructure. The United States imports roughly 4 million barrels of Canadian crude oil per day. That is structural dependency. American refineries, particularly in the Midwest and Gulf Coast, are designed to process heavy crude from Canada. Shifting to alternative sources requires infrastructure investment, contract renegotiation, and time. Canada knows this, and Canada is using it. According to industry reports, Canadian energy officials have begun exploring mechanisms to redirect oil exports toward Asian and European markets. This is the result of strategic planning that accelerated after Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods. The message from Ottawa was clear. If Washington treats Canada as expendable, Canada will treat American energy dependency as negotiable. That shift is now producing real-world effects. Oil prices in the United States have climbed steadily over the past 2 weeks. Analysts attribute the surge to tightening supply from Canadian sources combined with increased global demand. Refineries that rely on Canadian heavy crude are facing higher input costs. Those costs are being passed directly to consumers. Gas stations across the Midwest are reporting price increases that exceed seasonal norms. This is supply chain disruption driven by policy conflict. The timing is not coincidental. Just days after Trump publicly threatened Canada with additional tariffs, Canadian officials confirmed they were reviewing energy export policy. Within a week, oil futures began trending upward. Within 2 weeks, gas prices at the pump had risen noticeably. Trump escalated. Canada responded. American consumers are now paying the cost. This is where the narrative shifts. Trump framed his tariff threats as defending American workers and industry. But if those threats trigger energy price increases that hit American families directly, the political calculus changes. Tariffs on steel or aluminum affect specific industries. Rising gas prices affect everyone. And voters notice gas prices immediately and hold political leaders accountable. Energy dependency is not a weakness Canada created. It is a structural reality that has existed for decades. American refineries invested billions in infrastructure designed to process Canadian crude. Jobs, profits, and supply chains were built on stable access to Canadian oil. Trump's tariff threats destabilized that assumption. And now the infrastructure designed around Canadian supply is vulnerable. Canada did not need to impose formal export restrictions to create pressure. It simply needed to signal that access was no longer guaranteed. That signal alone shifted market expectations. Traders began pricing in supply risk. Refineries began seeking alternative sources. And prices rose. This is strategic economic signaling. Quiet, precise, and effective. What makes this particularly damaging for Trump is that it undermines his central economic message. He promised to make America energy dominant, to reduce dependence on foreign energy, and to protect American consumers from rising costs. Yet his tariff threats have accelerated the very outcomes he claimed to prevent. American refineries are more exposed. American consumers are paying more. American energy security is less stable. This is not strength. This is miscalculation. Mark Carney's approach has been methodical. He did not threaten energy cutoffs. He simply allowed Canadian officials to explore alternatives. That exploration created uncertainty. And in energy markets, uncertainty drives prices. Carney understood that Canada does not need to weaponize oil exports to create leverage. It only needs to demonstrate that alternatives exist. Industry analysts warn that sustained pressure on Canadian energy flows could push gas prices significantly higher. Some projections suggest that if export restrictions were formalized, prices at the pump could rise by 20 to 30 cents per gallon within weeks. That increase would ripple across the entire United States because Canadian crude feeds refineries that supply national distribution networks. A disruption in Windsor affects gas stations in Georgia. A slowdown in Alberta affects prices in Texas. Republican lawmakers in energy-dependent states are beginning to express concern. Publicly, they remain supportive of Trump's trade policies. Privately, they are asking whether tariff threats are worth destabilizing fuel supplies. Michigan Republicans are caught between defending the president and protecting constituents seeing gas prices climb. This is quiet discomfort, and it becomes louder when election cycles approach. Trump's response has been defensive. He has downplayed the connection between his tariff threats and rising oil prices. He has blamed global markets and OPEC decisions. But the data tells a different story. The surge correlates directly with the escalation of trade tensions with Canada. Refineries have confirmed that Canadian supply uncertainty is a primary factor. Trump can deny the connection, but the market is not listening. What Trump failed to anticipate is that Canada holds structural advantages in this confrontation. The United States needs Canadian energy more than Canada needs American tariff exemptions. Canada can redirect exports to Asia and Europe. The United States cannot replace 4 million barrels per day of heavy crude overnight. That asymmetry gives Canada leverage. This episode reveals a fundamental flaw in Trump's trade strategy. He assumes that economic size equals economic power. But economic power is about dependency, alternatives, and who can walk away. In the energy relationship between the United States and Canada, the United States is more dependent. And that dependency is now being exposed. Energy prices have direct political consequences. Rising gas prices reduce disposable income, increase inflation pressure, and create voter dissatisfaction. Trump built his political brand on economic competence. He promised lower costs and energy dominance. If gas prices continue rising because of his trade policies, that brand erodes. Voters care about what they pay at the pump. Mark Carney did not need to escalate publicly. He allowed market forces to work. He allowed Canadian officials to signal policy reviews. He allowed traders to price in risk. And he allowed American consumers to feel the consequences. This is strategic patience, the opposite of Trump's confrontational style, and it is proving more effective. Midterm elections are approaching. Republican incumbents in swing districts are vulnerable. Rising gas prices are a political liability. If prices remain elevated through the campaign season, Democrats will use them as evidence of failed leadership. Trump's tariff threats, supposed to demonstrate strength, could become evidence of recklessness. Canada is not trying to destroy the American economy. It is trying to reset the terms of engagement. For years, Canada accepted a subordinate role in the economic relationship with the United States. It absorbed tariffs and negotiated from weakness. Trump interpreted that as weakness. He believed Canada would always back down. Carney is proving that assumption wrong. Canada is recalibrating in ways that hurt Trump politically. The oil price surge exposes the limits of Trump's negotiating style. He thrives on unpredictability and assumes opponents will fold under pressure. But when opponents refuse to fold, his strategy collapses. Carney refused to fold. Canada absorbed the initial tariff threats, built alternative trade relationships, and strengthened domestic resilience. Now it is applying counter-pressure where the United States is vulnerable. Trump expected capitulation. He got strategic resistance. Energy market analysts warned the situation could deteriorate further. If Canada formalizes export restrictions or accelerates diversification toward Asian markets, the impact on American refineries will intensify. Prices could spike. Supply disruptions could occur. Political pressure on Trump will mount. He will face a choice: retreat from tariff threats to stabilize energy flows, or continue escalating and accept the consequences. Either option damages his credibility. This is what happens when economic policy is driven by ego rather than analysis. Trump wanted to pressure Canada. Instead, he created vulnerabilities that Canada is now exploiting. He wanted to project strength. Instead, he exposed dependency. The oil price surge is not an accident. It is the result of strategic miscalculation. Mark Carney's leadership style is the opposite of Trump's. Where Trump threatens, Carney plans. Where Trump escalates, Carney diversifies. Where Trump demands, Carney waits. Trump attempted to dominate Canada through tariffs. Canada responded by demonstrating that dominance requires leverage, not volume. In the energy sector, Canada has the leverage. The broader lesson is clear. Economic confrontations are not won by the loudest voice. They are won by the side with better alternatives. Canada built alternatives. It strengthened trade with Europe. It expanded energy infrastructure toward Asia. It reduced economic dependence on the United States. Trump assumed those efforts would fail. He was wrong. Trump attempted to weaponize tariffs. Instead, he handed Canada a reason to weaponize energy exports. He attempted to project economic dominance. Instead, he revealed structural dependency. He attempted to pressure Canada into submission. Instead, he created political pressure on himself. The oil price surge was predictable. The damage to Trump's credibility was avoidable. But both are now reality. If you value serious analysis of economic power and strategic miscalculation, subscribe to Canada Today. We track leverage, consequences, and the gap between rhetoric and reality. Because sometimes the story is not the threat. It is who has the alternatives when the threat is made.